I have seen more discussion in the past day about this show once again than I have about probably anything else. And that includes the Barbie movie, and that's pretty impressive, I have to say. But I've been seeing a lot of discourse because, as you may have seen, I didn't do a review on episode 4. There wasn't a whole lot of stuff that happened. They got their first job. They got to go to a gala where they were supposed to interview Anthony Ivo, and then we ended up getting the reveal that he was working on the Parasite armor because they had to go and change that for the show. Didn't like that. No, that's not the way to go for Parasite. So not at all a fan of that whole thing. But then we did get the cute little moment between Superman and Lois, and then he gets close to almost revealing, his secret identity to her.
Actually, there's something I've been wanting to say. Something I need to tell you. Lois,
And it's all Superman's fault. I know.
And then they don't end up doing that, but it doesn't really matter because by the end of the episode, she does finally put it together when she finds, the crumpled up page that was in his jacket pocket, and she puts it together that he is Superman. And that's actually the crux of what the whole discussion and discourse has been about, because there has been a lot of comparison to this particular episode, episode 5, about her kind of confronting Clark about this information. And the comparison has been to Amber from Invincible, because that was another instance where it was very poorly received, the way that she kind of reacted. Although in that one, I feel it was handled differently. Having seen both shows, I feel that it's very different. There's a lot of context that has been kind of stripped away because everybody's focusing more so just on what she said in that moment. So, you know me, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to show what it is that actually happened, why I view it the way that I view it. And if you agree with me, you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. I've already seen there are plenty of people that disagree with me, so that's totally fine. But I always have to present, especially when the thoughts I'm having, I don't really see other people kind of presenting. I feel the need to just put it out there. So let's kind of talk about what happens in this particular episode. Now, the episode does start, and we already see Lois is waking up. She probably hasn't gotten a whole lot of sleep, and she's frustrated, as we can tell, by the fact that, this secret has just been kept from her. And then we also see Jimmy is very excited because he has this whole thing that he wanted them to go Sasquatch hunting. That's the whole thing that he's worried about this entire episode. But he immediately is alerted to the fact that there is a response video that's been made to one of his latest videos. And apparently we see that this is something that happens a lot, that there is another channel that's just there to be the negative reaction to his channel. So every one of his channels, it's just them saying nah. So we're going to see more of that, and it's actually kind of a funny reveal later on in the episode about that whole thing. So as Jimmy leaves, he calls up Clark to basically tell him that, this is the day they're supposed to go Sasquatch hunting and everything. And he's telling Jimmy that he's actually planning today to tell Lois that he likes her, which of course Jimmy does point out she already knows that. But he's like, well, no, but I haven't said the words, so because he wants to go for that whole thing. We can see where that's going to be the thing that's foremost on his mind. He wants to tell her, I like you, in that kind of way. So that's his inner dilemma at the present moment. And we're going to see where he, I guess, just keeps misinterpreting signals, pretty much. And Jimmy's also letting him know that, he's already got everything prepared for their, Sasquatch hunting trip. And the other internal conflict that we see coming through here is that it's going to be between Jimmy and both Lois and Clark. It's really not just, that's part of the thing that's kind of been bothering me, I guess, about some of the discourse. It seems like everybody's just focusing on the thing between Lois and Clark, and that's understandable, but it's actually between all three of them. This is kind of the episode that's showing them breaking apart. I'm assuming so that in the next episode they're going to have them coming back together, or it might be them coming back together in a weird disjointed type of way where there's still awkward feelings. Don't really know how exactly they want to play it, but the overarching theme here is that they're breaking the core group apart. And the way they're doing that with Jimmy is that he's really excited for the Sasquatch hunting thing. The two of them just could not care less. It's not anywhere on their minds. So that's where he keeps getting, basically just left out hanging by himself. For example, when he's talking to Lois about going on the trip, she's telling him, would you be able, if I was to give you a whole list of dates and events, when Clark was just not around, would you be able to account for where he was? And then she starts kind of going through some of that.
On August 3rd, he said he was going to get a bagel, but he was gone for 20 minutes, and then he came back without a bagel. Also, have you noticed how often he steps out for bagels?
But anyway, as Jimmy gets into the office building, he's immediately confronted by Steve Lombard, who's basically telling him, hey, you're going on assignment with me because, you know, Perry already said it's okay, and we even get that quick little look over to Perry, which did actually make me laugh. We're then introduced to the more minor threat in the actual episode, and I say minor because it is going to be very minor. The one thing that's not minor is the gender swap, because the character that we're introduced here is called Rory, and then we later see where they have heat wave powers. So this is Heat Wave from the comics. Why this character was needed to be gender swapped, there really wasn't any. One of those things where I was like, there's never been any iteration of that character that was a woman. What was the point? But, you know, that's what they did, so there it is. Apparently we have our Heat Wave from this particular episode. So we're starting to see here where the technology is actually not working so great, at least for them it's not. So Heatwave has some trouble at first getting the actual technology to work. It seems to need to charge up for a while, and even when it's working, it's not really working all that great. But as they run in to try and steal from this place, they immediately are confronted by another threat, and the idea is that it's probably Superman, but then we're immediately shown that it's actually not Superman. But going over to Lois now, we see where she's trying to come up with the idea of like, okay, how do I get Clark to tell me that he's Superman? Because she doesn't want to just come right out and say, I know who you are. She wants him to, you know, be the one to come and tell her. And then this is one of those moments where we actually get confirmation from that, because when she walks in, she sees there's this box there that's actually addressed to Steve, and when she tries to move it, she can't. And then when she asks, you know, what's in this thing, dumbbells, she sees that's exactly what it is, even though it's actually just one. And then of course she gets, you know, mad about Steve. But when Clark comes in, he sees it just closed and asks if she needs help moving it, and he just picks it up like it's nothing, which, you know, is just further confirmation to her that, oh yeah, he must be Superman, because that thing was really heavy. So but Clark actually takes this opportunity to tell Lois that he wanted to approach her to talk to her about something, and he tells her that he actually wants to write a story with her. She initially thinks that it's about Superman, but he says no, about, you know, the tech weapons that are popping up all over the city all of a sudden. And then he also shows her that he also has his own board that he's been working on. She at first thinks that he's copying the murder board thing that she had, but then he tells her no, it's an investigation board. That's what I'm calling it. And it's while he's kind of discussing some of the evidence he's pieced together so far that he also mentions that the technology seems very familiar to him for some reason, and for that reason he wants to like track it down and find out, you know, who's making it and why. And he reveals to her that he actually also has one of the old like dispatch police scanners. So what they're planning to do is try and listen for any reports of, you know, the attacks using this technological weaponry, and then they're just going to try and show up at the scene to try and get more answers. And we see where Lois starts trying to give Clark the out here, because she keeps suggesting that, you know, what if we try and involve Superman in some way? She keeps trying to put across the idea that she wants to try and get him and Superman in the same place at the same time. But of course, Clark is a little bit of a sweet summer child, so...
We? Are you saying yes to writing this with me? This is gonna be great.
And then we get this fun little moment where there are these emergencies being reported over the scanner, and Clark immediately runs out, going back to the whole, like, he runs out for bagels a lot thing. He goes and says that he has bagels that he forgot about, and he goes and he saves the day, then he comes back, and right when he's walking in the room...
Where were we?
All units, there's a mugging on 47th.
Cream cheese!
Disregard previous request. Superman has it under control.
So like I said, just a fun little thing. I enjoy moments like that. Just kind of adds to the levity of the show. And of course, Lois being Lois, she looks at this as an opportunity to now try and track Superman's movements based off of what's being reported over the scanner and the fact that Superman will always show up whenever there's a problem. We go back over to Steve and Jimmy, and Steve is trying to basically lay down his life rules for Jimmy and trying to teach him, take him under his wing as like his protege, because he sees Jimmy as the Steve of his group, which Jimmy is very much offended by because he sees himself, Lois, and Clark as a team. And we do see that the conflict kind of escalates a little bit in that Jimmy is trying to reach out to both of them to try and get out of this whole thing he's doing with Steve, and neither of them is responding to any of his text messages. So he does start to see a little bit of validation in what Steve is saying, and that, yeah, they aren't really as close to you as you think they are. And then the really funny part is when it's actually revealed that the reason why he's here with Steve is that he's going to be his cameraman, because he wants to now be seen when he does his reaction videos to the Flamebird account. And that's when Jimmy finally realizes that, oh shit, Steve is the one who's been hating on all of my videos. And then we see where Superman is flying around, he's helping in different spots, and Lois keeps trying to chase after him. And when she finally manages to run into him one of the times, she starts pressing him about his involvement, his closeness to Clark Kent, and if he knows him. And she decides that she's going to go ahead and just handcuff herself and threaten Superman that he's not allowed to leave until Clark shows up, so that the two of them can ask him questions. And right as that actually happens, the villains show up and decide they're going to attack Superman now. So now we see where Heatwave and the group from before also come back. They go through their whole little fight sequence, and then Heatwave actually ends up apologizing because, her technology doesn't work for a moment, and then she falls to her knees and begs Superman not to kidnap her too. And we're kind of introduced to this mystery that apparently the rumor's been spreading that it's actually Superman who's been taking these people using this technology. And then we do get another quick back and forth between Jimmy and Steve about him not really being that close to Lois and Clark, and it ends with him basically saying, like, are you sure that they're really, there for you? And he gets the reminder that, they're supposed to go Sasquatch hunting, and he's feeling confident again and decides, yeah, my friends are going to show up. They said they would be there, so he gets ready to go and do that. And then we go back over to Superman and Lois, where Lois is trying to question Heatwave about what she knows.
So you're going to tell us everything you know about that tech and what you meant about kidnapping, or I let my flying friend here cut loose.
That's not happening.
Then I'll cut loose.
Miss Lane, please don't threaten people. It's wrong.
Fine. Tell us what you know, or my friend here will worry excessively about your welfare.
So Heatwave ends up revealing to them that part of the reason why they're going with this assumption that Superman is taking people is that earlier on in the episode, when all of her people got taken, it was because somebody was moving too fast for them to see, and nobody, so far as they know, is able to move as fast as Superman can, so they're operating on that assumption. And then we see who it actually is, and this honestly should have been something that was talked about more than anything else, because we finally got to see Deathstroke's, masked appearance here, and it does not look good at all. This costume is just absolutely trash. No good. Go back and redo it. Go back and have some way that this one gets destroyed and go back and redo it. We need a different one. Of course, Superman flies Lois to the top of the Daily Planet building and tells her, all right, you need to stay here because I can't allow you to possibly put yourself in harm's way. She tries to get him to stop. It doesn't end up working. One thing that is kind of surprising is that she ends up calling him Clark as he's flying away, so I'm pretty sure he should have been close enough still to potentially have heard her say his name. That's what I'm saying, but you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? They don't really show him, so I don't know exactly how far away he was at that point, but I think he was still close enough to hear her. We then see where Heatwave is being pursued and thinks that it's by Superman, but then the actual Superman happens to be flying by and goes down and confronts her again. He decides he wants to get back into the fight and asks, both Amanda Waller and the General, who I'm pretty sure is General Sam Lane. He ends up asking them, for permission to engage again. He ends up calling the technology being used reclaimed tech, so definitely puts more into that theory that this is possibly Kryptonian or some force that opposes the Kryptonians, possibly, I'm not sure. So Superman's fight with Heatwave is actually interrupted, and he sees that it's by somebody who seems to be using Intergang's freeze ray, and then we see that obviously it's Deathstroke, so he comes back in and the two of them get back into their fight. And it's actually during the course of this fight that a bridge that has a whole bunch of people on it is actually damaged and starts to crumble, so of course Superman gets pissed off at Deathstroke and just punches him in the face saying, people need help, so you need to just go the fuck away, pretty much. And of course, he springs into action to help out the people, and it's actually during this moment that Deathstroke actually lines up a shot and is ready to take it at Superman as he's trying to help these people. And of course, Amanda Waller is 100% down with taking the shot, but the General actually decides that no, we can't do this at the expense of actual human lives. So that's kind of more of the reason why I'm saying this has to be General Sam Lane, because, Lois has already mentioned how her dad keeps secrets and he's away a lot or whatever. And then, him doing this, showing like he's not all the way evil, he just doesn't like Superman, so that definitely checks out for his character. So in the end, he tells Deathstroke to stand down, Deathstroke just fucks off, and then the two of them just let their holograms fade away and let Superman save the day, pretty much. He keeps one of the wounds that he got from Deathstroke's blades, and he flies back over to Lois, obviously in the guise as Clark now, so that way he can go and reassure her that everything is fine. She sees that he's hurt and tries to, you know, address it, but he says, oh no, it's from shaving. I went to go and, you know, water my plants at my apartment, and that's what ended up happening. So she, of course, gets mad because she knows the truth. She's been trying to get the truth out of him and suggest it pretty hard the whole episode, and then when she finally like sees, you know, one of his wounds, he tries to just play it off like, oh no, it was a shaving thing. So of course she says, you know, are you really gonna play it this type of way? And then she decides to just force his hand by dropping off the side of the building, knowing that he's going to save her, which of course he does, and she immediately gets upset with him. And this is the reason why people have been comparing her to Amber from Invincible, because that character also got mad when, you know, it was revealed that her boyfriend was a superhero. Although in this one, they're not boyfriend girlfriend, you know, they're just friends. And then, well, friends but with crushes. And then on top of that, she's been suggesting it the whole episode that she like knows, but she wanted him to tell her. So it was just that, you know, he was keeping the secret from her type of thing. Honestly, I don't like that trope of them getting upset about this like superhero having a secret identity. I don't really like that. I will say that it's handled a lot better here than it was with Invincible, because in that one, Amber just was unrepentantly a bitch about, you know, everything that Mark was going through, so that you really felt bad about it. This one, we saw where Lois actually figured it out on her own, and she kept trying to get the truth out of him, and he wouldn't reveal it. So that's why I'm saying it's different. With Amber, she didn't even know anything about it, and then when the truth was just revealed to her, she still got mad. This one, Lois knew the truth, tried to keep it to herself, and then tried to get him to reveal it to her a bunch of times, and then when he still lied to her face, that's when she finally was like, really? You're really gonna keep lying to me even though I know the truth about you? So that's kind of why I'm saying it's handled a little bit better here. Still don't like it. Still don't like the handling on that. But at the same time, I'm willing to give them credit and say it was handled better here, though. So that's kind of why I'm saying I don't really see them as being the same. And then on top of that, it didn't really hurt Invincible's reputation, did it? Everyone still loves Invincible. Everyone's, you know, going crazy for the Adam Eve special right now, which is fair. It's a great, you know, special. But that's what I'm saying. If we're going to compare it to that show, I mean, that show is still pretty well regarded. So I don't really see this as being breaking to the whole thing, you know what I mean? If that's the worst thing it has, you know, in common with that show, well, I mean, there you have that. But yeah, I don't really see that comparison being that much of a thing, because like I said, handled differently, and at the end of the day, Invincible is still a great show, so it didn't hurt that show. One thing I will say, I give credit to Clark for actually standing up for himself and standing his ground and actually defending his decisions.
You hated Superman. You said he was a liar, and you were gonna find and publish all of his secrets. My secrets.
That's one thing I don't really see people talking too much about in this whole discourse around this particular episode, and I think that was really cool that they did show him standing up for himself. And then Lois pretty much just ends up confirming that, you know, whatever we were headed towards, the relationship we were going to have, yeah, that's all dead now. She pretty much doesn't want anything to do with him at this point. And then right at the end, like I said, we get that final crumbling of the whole group, because you see where Lois and Clark's thing is pretty much done. And then we go over to Jimmy, who is now waiting because neither of them showed up. So he decides, you know what? It doesn't matter if they didn't show up. I don't need either one of them. I'm going to go Sasquatch hunting by myself then. And then we actually see where he does go Sasquatch hunting, and that's not what he finds. Instead, what he finds appears to be a very large gorilla. And then that's kind of where the episode ends. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Didn't really see that particular ending coming, but hey, there it is. Like I said, I've seen a lot of discussion because of the whole thing with Lois and people not really liking the way that was handled. What was kind of confusing to me was the people who seemed to be happy that people weren't pleased with that, which seems kind of a weird thing to me. Like, if people saw it and they didn't like it, at least they're not lying to themselves about it. That and still the whole technology thing, but I do get the feeling they're working more towards giving people actual powers now that we're seeing the technology not really working so great. There are people who are being kidnapped for nefarious purposes and held somewhere. So I definitely feel like people are going to end up getting powers instilled into them in some fashion, so we'll see exactly how that's going to end up being handled. And then on top of that, like I mentioned, this whole episode was meant to tear the group apart, tear the team apart, which it has definitely, done very obviously. Now we're going to see where I'm assuming they're going to use the setup of Jimmy being kidnapped in some way to kind of bring Lois and Clark back together. Possibly, if they kind of have to work together to save him in, some fashion or something like that, and then them having saved him will kind of get him to maybe come around, or maybe he'll be mad at them for a little bit. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly which way they're going to go with it, but that's kind of what I'm seeing is going to happen here. So overall, like I said, I've just seen a lot of discussion about it. I didn't get around to actually making the video last week because last week was actually my boyfriend's birthday, so that's why I just kind of got busy with some other stuff. And then yeah, I decided to go ahead and jump back in, and what a perfect time to jump back into making videos about this show, because all of a sudden, just right in my lap, this whole topic just fell right there because they decided to do this in that episode. So that's currently what everybody is discussing. I have put my thoughts out there now. We have talked about the episode. Overall, am I still enjoying the show? Yeah, overall, in a sense. I still don't really like, the way that they're handling villains, but I can get past that because I still like a whole lot of other elements of the show. This particular thing still doesn't break it for me because it's very obvious they're going to have something to where they end up coming back to a state where everything is okay and they can end up falling in love. So we'll see how long exactly that's going to take and how they're going to handle it along the way. So I guess overall I've said all that I need to say on this particular episode, but I would like to know what you think. Feel free to share your thoughts with me in the comment section. Like the video if you liked the video. If you didn't like the video, well, there is a button for that too. So feel free to make your thoughts heard however you wish to do so. If you're done here, maybe go and read a book. That'd be my preference, but if not, then I'll see you on my next video.